Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a member of the Iron Guard. As you can see, the model is being primed white. First base coat is Cantor Blue over the jacket, followed by Celestial Grey over the trousers. You can see that I've spilled over onto some of the other areas. It's not the end of the world, as we're going to be base coating them as well. As always when base coating, make sure you water down your paint and apply 2 thin layers if necessary. Next up is Celestial Grey on the trousers and the hat. With the Celestial Grey done, we now move on to the skin tones, which we're going to base coat in Bugman's Glow. So go in with the watered down Bugman's Glow on all the flesh areas, which are just the face and the hands. One difference between the older models and the newer ones is a lack of defined edges on the older models. So sometimes you have to take a bit of artistic license as to where the edges are. Next up, we're applying Mephiston Red to the tassels. I assume that's what they're called. And the decorative rope that he has across the chest. And the line around his hat as well. There are also red lines down the side of his pants or his trousers. There's a red line on his uniform that flows down here and all along the side and along the edges at the back. To paint that, tin your paint and use the edge of the brush. And control the amount of paint that you have on the brush. If you use the edge, it's a lot easier and a lot less time consuming than you'd think. Just be careful of the other details that you've already done. Next up is the base coat of Lead Belcher over all metallic areas. So you're looking at the gun barrel, the teeth of his chainsword, and any Imperial emblems that he has on his uniform. I always find when it's painting a chainsword, it's easier to paint the teeth first. And you can just clean up any spill that you get onto the casing with black, rather than having to go down and paint each individual tooth, which will inevitably lead to you getting some on the black and having to go right back and redo the black. So I prefer to paint the teeth first. Now the Lead Belcher is done. I apply the Lead Belcher to his belt buckle, his emblem here, here, the gun barrel and the teeth of the chainsword. I know it's hard to see it on the camera, but it is there because the detail is quite small. Next up is the final base coat, which is a Baden black, which will be going on the weapon casing, chainsword, the peak on his hat and his boots. Now that the Abaddon Black is done, we're finished with the base coats. At this point I always think it's better to go back over the model and just check and see if any areas need cleaning up. There's a couple of areas where I've missed. You can see there's a bit of blue missing there by his emblem and by his sleeve here. So just go back over the model and just double check everything before you apply our shades. Next up is the shade of Null Oil. The Null Oil is applied over everything except the skin. Make sure you work it into all the recesses. When applying a shade, if you ever find too much on the model, such as here on the leg, all you have to do is wipe your brush off again, and you can use the brush to soak up any excess pools and to spread it around. Just make sure you work it into the recesses. Next up is to go in with Reichland Flesh Shade and go over all the flesh areas. For this I'm using a medium layer brush as opposed to the larger shade brush, because they need finer control. So we just paint it on to the flesh areas. Try not to get it to mix it with the Null Oil. Now that the Reichland Flesh Shade has been applied, we just leave both shades to dry. Now I've given the shade at least 30 minutes to dry. In that time I've base coated the base with Mechanicus Standard Grey and given it a wash of Agrax Earthshade. Obviously you're going to base your own models to match your army. Next up is a layer of white Scar on the trousers, which we're going to dry brush on with a small dry brush. When dry brushing, just apply some paint to your brush and wipe off as much of it as you can. Work it into the bristles. I find it's easier to test on an edge, at the edge of the base, or even the edge of your painting handle, to get a feel for how much paint you're going to be leaving with each brush. When you're happy with what's on the brush, then you just dry brush the white areas. While dry brushing is great for getting a lot of work done fast, it does have a tendency to leave a chalky appearance on flat raised surfaces. To avoid that, now we're just going to do a tiny bit of layering with white Scar just on the absolute highest areas, just to give them a smoother white. Next up we apply a layer of Atteldorf Guard Blue over the previous Cantor Blue. Try applying it to the creases and any large flat areas. Just try to stay out of any recesses. Now that we're finished with the Atteldorf Guard Blue layering, you move on to Cadian Flesh Tone, and obviously on the flesh areas. Just the exact same control the amount of paint on the brush and just highlight the raised areas. Next up is to add a few of the final touches of colour. We're going to use Evil Sun Scarlet to highlight most, not all, of the red areas. We're going to use the edge of the brush where possible to give a clean edge. And the final colour that we're going to apply over the black on his boots, the gun casing, and we're going to dry brush the base as well with it, is Dawnstone. Highlight the black areas with Dawnstone. So just the same as always, control the amount of paint on the brush and use the edge where possible to give a smooth little line. Now that the base is dry brushed, one final little touch, just give it a touch of super glue. Dot of super glue on the base. And with our tweezers, you just apply a little tuft. Doesn't seem to want to stick. Apply a tuft of grass to the base with some super glue. And you can call him done. And you have another guardsman ready to die in the name of the God Emperor. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.